best DJ in town is here. The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge.
Well, it's already 25 minutes moving down after midnight here on the February 19, 2023. And this is the debut episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. My name is Albert Williams. I'm your host, and I'll be sharing with you a number of interesting topics tonight on our debut episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast. So how has your week been so far? For me, it has been an interesting past 7 days. Be sure to share the live, be sure to comment, be sure to react. You can make a comment in the comment section. And I'll be sharing a link so that if you want to join me in the studio, you may do so. Otherwise, you can just share the live, sit back and relax. This is the best podcast in town. Albert Williams, your host. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week, everything that has caught my attention, and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast.
Remarkable, and very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable, and very large and in charge.
Well, coming up for you in the program this morning, I should say, we're going to be looking at a number of interesting points. Coming up is the changing of the old guard. That's going to take us up to about 1 o'clock. Followed by this, we'll be looking at the Carnival Queen and the Carnival King. As you know, the Carnival Monarch competition kicks off tonight at the forecourt at the Windsor Park Sports Stadium. 9 Calypsonians will be going up against the reigning Calypso King, King JD, and he'll be defending his crown tonight. So we're hoping that whilst we're online, that we'll hear the results and we'll be the first to share the results with you of this year's 2023 Calypso Monarch competition. About 1:30 thereabout, we're going to talk about the recently held CARICOM 44th regular meeting in Bahamas. The CARICOM community has released a communique. We'll be sharing some aspects from that as well. And as you know, on Monday, the UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Science and Cultural Organization, held its 12th edition of World Radio Day. We'll be flashing back in some memories of what radio meant to us, what radio still means to us. And this is going to be an interesting segment, as it was the World Radio Day that inspired me to get this podcast off the ground. Actually, it was 2 years in the making. I can remember sometime in May of 2020, I announced that I was thinking of getting this podcast off the ground. Well, it hasn't materialized until this morning. So if you're in the background there listening or not, you're part of history. At around 2:45, we hope to discuss with you some more aspects of what this podcast is all about. We have a slideshow to share with you to explain the bullet points of how this project is evolving, what I hope to get out from this project. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, who I am, and what I've been up to, what my skill sets are, and what my vision is for this podcast. Hopefully that'll take us to around 4 o'clock. Maybe before that, the Calypso results will be announced, and we'll be happy to share them with you and to perhaps give some commentary or to receive some of your feedback on what you think about the entire Calypso season, the Carnival season. Come Monday and Tuesday, it will be Carnival Monday, jump up, and Carnival Tuesday, jump up. So we're looking forward to that, as always. This is the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. And the time already moving up to 29 minutes, moving up to 1 o'clock. You're listening to the Albert Williams podcast. And we are going to begin with a sad announcement. This week we heard about the passing of Desmond Martin, Mr. Desmond Martin. He died at the age of 83. He was from Bafa State, and he passed away on February the 12th at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. And this is a sad moment for the sports fraternity, because Mr. Mate was very active in sports. I can remember as a child growing up, in Kennedy Avenue, that Mr. Marte was, a fixture on the sports field. I know him as a footballer. I know him as a referee, and we can share more about him later down in the program. But for now, I'll just tell you that it's a sad moment for us from the Roseau, the Central Roseau, and also for the sporting fraternity. And since the year began, we have lost a number of notable persons of Dominica. We laid to rest the Lord Solo, the four times Calypso monarch. In 1973, he won the monarch. In 1975, 76, and 77. His name is Wilfred Constant, also known as Lord Solo and also known as King Solo. And he was visiting Dominica, and unfortunately, he met with a very fatal accident, swimming accident, and he was laid to rest. And Lord Solo, his Calypso Mass in the Cemetery, has become a folklore, has gone down in folklore history. As you all know, the Lord Solo sang about various cultural persons involved in culture, such as Sisi Kodora, Eddie Mate, and other individuals, Eric Williams, and other persons. And now he has gone himself to the great beyond to rest in eternal peace. And like I said, we also laid to rest this Irving Shillingford. Irving Shillingford was laid to rest on Friday, the 10th of February. And we know Irving Shillingford in Roseau as well. As a young boy growing up, the Windsor Park and the Botanical Gardens were the places where we would hang out and we would play sports, go bathe in the river, hunt for guavas, and spend a lot of our time. I'm talking about when I was about 11, 12, 13, those kind of years. And Irvin Shillingford has done Dominica proud. He received an official funeral. Um, yes, he received an official funeral on the 10th of February. And he'll be remembered for the four test matches and two ODIs, one day cricket internationals in 1977 and 1978. He also played a further 88 first class games, 49 of them for the Combined Islands, whom he represented from its inception until its dissolution in 1961. And Irving Shillingford comes from that vintage Dominican family. He's the cousin of Grayson Shillingford, who also was one of the first Dominicans to make it to West Indies Test cricket in the 1970s. Suffice it is to say that over the years, a number of prominent sportsmen have made their final innings. I can remember people like Mr. Heskif Kazimi, very instrumental with the Dominica's Referee Association. He also has gone to rest. We also have Henry John Baptist, who was a Windward Island player both in cricket and in football. He also went to rest in the early part of the 2000s. I'd also like to say continued rest in peace to Mr. Price, Percival Price. He was a resident of Kennedy Avenue and lived up in the States for a long time. And he shared on his Facebook page a lot of memories of life growing up in Dominica and in Roseau. And we are very fortunate that he recognized the status of Mr. Desmond Marte. And I was able to find some interesting photographs and interesting comments about Mr. Mate on Price's Facebook page. It's 21 minutes moving up on 1 o'clock, and we're moving on with the program. This is the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. But before we go on to the next segment, I want to share a special song from the Albert Contemporary catalog. It's called They Became a Team. I'd like to dedicate this to Mr. the late Desmond Matter, and also to the late Irvin Shillingford, and to the Lord Solo. That was a special song for Mr. Desmond Mate, Irving Sheniford, and Lord Solo. As we remember them, they remember their contribution to the cultural development and sporting development of Dominica. And that was a special song by Albert and Tempe, the winning team, and the winning team band in the background there. And you're listening to the Albert and Tempe, the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. I'd like to say good evening to my wife, Empress Tempe Williams. I know that you're locked in, and this is a great moment for us as well, for you. And we're looking forward to getting through this program. Of course, you can send in your comments on the comment section, share the live, subscribe to the page. This is going to be a weekly affair every midnight on Saturday. I hope to come on the air and to share some more knowledge, some more entertainment, some more reflections. I hope to have live guests to come on to link up with me and to make this a success. But like I said, in the next section coming up, we're going to be talking about Carnival. We're going to be talking about the ongoing Calypso Monarch and the recently held Miss Dominica pageant. So stay tuned. It is 15 minutes moving up to 1 o'clock here on the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday to another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast. The best podcast. This is another number from Albert and Tempe on Reverb Nation. This one is called Dancing in the Streets. It's the instrumental version of Dancing in the Street, written by Albert Williams here and performed by Albert and Tempe and the winning team band. Over the course of the next few weeks, I hope to tell you more about my music, our music. Hope to tell you more about our creative enterprises, our digital assets, our attempts to get tableted television off the ground. Tell you about my publications. We got a lot to share with you on this podcast. It's a way of exploring the possibilities, giving back to society.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge.
as most of us will be aware that on Friday evening, Miss Dominica 2023 pageant was held at the Windsor Park Sports Stadium in the forecourt, and Adisa Burton emerged as the winner. She was representing the Kalinago territory, and she is the now reigning Miss Dominica 2023. First runner-up is Sandrine Elise, followed by second runner-up Tanya Eugene. And the young ladies competed in a number of rounds, and a number of awards were awarded based on the Best National Spectacular Wear Creation, of which Sandrine Elise emerged. She also grabbed the Best in National Spectacular Wear. Adisa Burton was judged Best Performing Talent. Tana Eugene, Best Swimwear. And Best Evening Wear went to Maya Francis. Tana Eugene also grabbed Best Evening Wear, and Best Response was taken by Adisia Burton. Other prize up for grabs was the People's Choice Award, which Tanya Eugene was awarded. Tanya Eugene also grabbed the Best Miss Amity Award, and Miss Photogenic went to Sandrine Elise. Sandrine Elise. Who will be 2023 Calypso Monarch? Dance in the Street by Albert and Tempe.
Remarkable. And very large and in charge. DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Of course, 10-piece, always a pleasure to play our music whenever we get that opportunity. We know it's not easy to make it in the music industry. There's lots of rivers to cross, mountains to climb, but we're going to get there by and by. It's moving up 2 minutes on 2 o'clock, and we're cruising with the first ever edition of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast. And I'm your host, Albert Williams. And by the way, this program is executive produced by my wife, Tempe Williams. We work as a team. She's the executive producer, and I am the producer and presenter. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about World Radio Day. time now 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 9 p.m. in Dominica and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. And as you know, on Monday, the 13th of February, the United Nations, UNESCO, had held their 12th edition of World Radio Day. And World Radio Day was held under the theme of Radio and Peace. And it was very moving to see so many organizations from around the world presenting their own particular presentations to mark the occasion. The role of radio is well accepted by, especially in the third world countries, but also radio is an international medium. It cuts through every race, nationality, and creed. Everyone uses the radio for various purposes. And the United Nations this year has identified radio as a conflict resolution tool. According to its website, it says radio in conflict prevention and peace building is an important player and an essential part of maintenance and transition to peace. Professional radio addresses both the root causes and triggers of conflict before they potentially explode into violence. According to UNESCO, the radio offers an alternative methodology of conflict prevention by clarifying frustrations or clashes of interests, clearing misunderstandings, and identifying issues of distrust. This can help counter hate, the desire for revenge, or the will to take up arms. That's some powerful statements from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, UNESCO, talking about World Radio Day and Radio and Peace. Yes, 4 minutes moving down after 1 in the morning, and you're with good company.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
You are listening to the debut episode of the best podcast in town, the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, which we just like to refer to as the podcast. Eight minutes moving down after one. And coming up, we're going to be talking a little more about what the podcast hopes to achieve. I'll tell you about the inspiration for the podcast, what prompted me at this time to deliver the goods. And what I think it takes to become a good podcaster, a good broadcaster for that matter. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me. It's a small start for a big project. I'm very excited about the possibilities of this enterprise. You see a lot of persons attempting to become internet stars of one variety or another, become influencers, become celebrities overnight. But I have been involved with journalism for over 40 years now, as both as an author of my books of poetry, books of short stories, non-fiction books, and also as a published columnist. But I'm not going to dwell too much on this right now. But up on the screen, you can see that I have a slideshow. It's called the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, producing the best podcast in town. So right there, you can see what my worldview is, what my strategy, what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to achieve the best podcast that you ever need to hear or want to hear, because a podcast must answer a particular need, a particular niche. And this one, my niche, is going to be helping young journalists, young broadcasters, reporters, writers, and other creatives to move along with their career. There's a lot to be discussed, that there's a lot keeping us back in terms of success. And I myself can say that there's a lot of room for improvement, even in my own management of my career and its output. So let's go to the slide and let's see how we can analyze what it is we have here for us to discuss. As I said, I have over 40 years experience in publishing. My first break came in 1981 when I approached the editor of the Chronicle, Mr. Joey Vanterpool, with a slim pamphlet. It was a little booklet of several chapters dealing with the Rastafari movement. And one of the chapters dealt with the holy weed or the holy herb, or as I said in the book, it was the tree of life. And I have to tell you about that encounter with Mr. Joy Van Tapul. It was in 1981. 1981, the Dread Act was very much in force. There was a lot of activity with the police, the Rastafarians, and Dreads in the hills. That year, Mr. Honeychurch was also kidnapped by a number of known and unknown persons. And we will deal with the Dread in in a subsequent edition of the podcast. But simply to say that in 1981, the environment was very, very risky for a young Dread. Nevertheless, I approached him with my manuscript, and he decided to take the segments on the tree of life and what I had to say about the tree of life. I was quoting various scriptures from the Bible and the usual Rastafarian defense of using the holy herb. And he, in his wisdom, decided that he's going to reply to my evangelism, so to speak. And he also wrote a long response, and he published his response alongside mine in a center spread in the Chronicle newspaper of January 1981. And that is how my career began as a published author or as a published writer. I got my byline, Ras Albert Williams, and it was one of those moments that any writer would be pleased of if your first attempt at publishing your work receives such a warm response from an editor of a newspaper and placed it in a center spread. You can go to my Dread Rastafari in Ethiopia page on Facebook, or you can go to the Ras Albert Williams page on Facebook, or to my personal Facebook profile, Albert Williams, where I share a lot of my previous works. I also have to date 10 publications. First one was in 1982. I published a 10 poem, 12-page book entitled Honorable Natty Dread, which was a tribute to Robert Nesta Marley and also a tribute to Desmond Trotter, Ras Kabinda. There were 10 poems in it. Well, actually, it was 10 poems, but out of the 10 poems, 5 of them were songs, which since I returned to England, I've been able to put together in my home studio and at least provide some demos of at least some 62 songs and equivalent karaoke tracks. Nevertheless, my wife and I, we met in 2004. In 2004, one of the first things I did when I came to England was to look for publishers to publish my short stories. And I'm moving kind of quick here, not very straight line, because in 2000 I wrote a diploma course in journalism and short story writing with the International Correspondence School. And I was invited by the Chronicle to join them as a reporter, which I did. And I stayed there at the Chronicle for at least 2.5 years, where I perfected my craft in writing articles, writing news articles, and writing longer articles. It was just an experience. And also with the Dominica Writers Guild and the Ethiopian World Federation, I learned how to manage my career and my skills through various engagements. And also, I was the secretary of the Media Workers Association for the year 2003, 2004. And the life just goes on. So we talk about a special book collector as well. As a writer, you also have to be an voracious reader, depending on what your segment is, what is your interest. And I have a wide set of interests. When I went to the Open University, I was able to get a degree in computing and IT and continue to get a diploma in technology management. And over the 8 years of studying with the Open University, I have amassed quite a collection of academic books on a number of topics. Also, I buy books on the Rastafari movement. I buy literature books from various Dominican authors and other authors that I'm interested in. And it all adds up into an experience. Before I move on from this slide, I'd just like to say that together with my wife, Empress Tempe Williams, we have embarked on a number of projects that we try to get off the ground. And she's very talented as well. She's the author of a best-selling novel, Feelings, and I'm sure we'll return to talking more about ourselves and what we have tried to do over the last 19 years of our relationship. Anyhow, on World Radio Day, which was on February 13th, on Monday, it was a day to reflect on the role of radio. And as I said, it was this World Radio Day experience that kind of got me thinking. And I've been thinking for a while now because I've been on early retirement since the pandemic. Since the pandemic struck and we were instructed to go home almost 2 years. After 1 year, I decided I'm going to take a year out, sabbatical. And at the end of that year, I just decided that I would just hand in my resignation and call it a day. I worked at Tesco, it's a supermarket, as a security guard and a union rep for over 15 years. And I learned a lot over the 15 years about retail. I did a lot of studying with the union, the and a number of courses I went to. And it is through the union that I was introduced to Open University. And I grabbed the opportunity with both hands and I paid my way through earning my degree. Only to say that it's very, very expensive now to do that because when I started in around 2010, an average course would cost you about £450. But over the years, the government has risen the price of tertiary education, and now that same courses that I would have paid £450 for now cost £1,500. So almost a 300% increase in the cost of doing just one module in a degree program. Around 2018, I decided to drop out from the postgraduate program, one module away from writing my thesis, because of domestic situation back here. I was finding myself torn for time. I couldn't really give the amount of attention I would have needed to complete successfully with a good grade my my master's in technology management. And again, I made a decision to call it a day, and I settled for a postgraduate diploma in technology management. And I will be sharing more about my Open University experience at a later date in a later podcast. And like I said, when I retired from Tesco, I set my mind on working through ideas of what could I do working from home to earn a income and a revenue, and to continue my writing and my reading and my researching and all the things that I am involved in. But I'm not busy. I wasn't over anxious. I'm just letting time move along. And I think that with the light bulb moment of starting a podcast, aiming to do the best podcast in town, it can tie in a lot of my training I received from the Open University, and a lot of my life experiences can be put into a podcast like this. And one of the advice from professionals who set up podcasts is to seek legal advice on all aspects of being an entrepreneur, being a broadcaster. But Tempe myself, we did quite a bit of courses when we were developing our tableted television enterprise. So a lot of the groundwork has already been done in getting this podcast project off the ground. And also because I had a lot of experience working with the media in Dominica, especially when I was a host of the KWF of the Dominica Writers Guild literary program called Review. I hosted that program for over 2 years and gained quite a bit of experience on how to be more spatial with presenting. And that was on radio, that wasn't on television or on live stream like what is happening today. And I believe that radio as a medium needs to be protected and not to be diluted into live streaming, which is a complete different kettle of fish when it comes to presenting sound. But we'll talk about these things when we reach there. But for now, I'm just pleased that I've begun this project. All the elements, all my training is coming to the fore. Experimentation over the years, over the last 16 years of the internet. We've tried many different applications and many different projects, including magazines, blogs. Okay, we're not going to talk about that too now, but except that this is what is happening now. Okay, let's take a little breath of music and I will continue with this exposition in a wee while. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Well, it's already 1:30 here in the United Kingdom. 1:30 in the morning. It is the 19th day of February 2023, and it is a Sunday. We're standing by to hear the results of the Calypso Monarch competition that is in progress in Dominica at the Windsor Park Sports Stadium forecourt. As you have heard, King JD will be up against 9 Calypsonians vying to take the crown this year. Let's just return to our slide that we were discussing, going through various elements of the newest podcast, the best podcast in town, the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast. And if you've been following my career for some time, you'll know that I have a number of blogs that I write in regularly, especially the Albert Williams Reporting blog, which is a newsy blog. It started off as a very technical blog as I was pursuing my computer and IT degree. There's a lot of writing, a lot of researching, a lot of methodology, a lot of experimentation, and I've been applying all of this into the creation of this project. Actually, the podcast idea came, as I said, from just after World Radio Day on Monday. By Tuesday, I had this idea. By Wednesday, I put together a jingle. By Thursday, I put together another jingle. By Friday, I was thinking about I would like to talk about World Radio Day and talk about other aspects. And all Friday, I was getting this slide together and other background material, my schedule for the program, so I know what's coming up, I know what's happening next, I know what song choice I've chosen for that segment, I know when the jingles are going to drop. I have notes on what I'm going to discuss at every item. So up on the screen here, we have it's called the pre-launch. So in the pre-launch, we're talking about what kind of product is it that we are trying to introduce to the public. Okay, there are many types of audio, visual, entertainment, grabbing, informative, addictive, all types of products out there. But in this particular instance, we're talking about creating an operating manual because where technology management is concerned, your management must be able to identify what is your unique selling point in your organization. You also need to determine what is your strategy, what is your motto, what is it that binds your organization together to achieve. Is it to help eliminate hunger? Is it to help to mitigate disasters? Is it in your quest to educate children about their potential, or is it your quest to find historical truths about your country, your nation, your family? So there must be this overarching aim, and you must be able to codify your processes, how you went about achieving those objectives. And I'll give you an example, a West Indian example, for instance. As you know, the West Indies were used as sugar plantations. They used slave labor, which was free. The only investment they had to put into it was to purchase the slaves. That's the only investment. And in the beginning, they didn't care that much about whether the slave had food to eat, whether he had a place to sleep, whether he had strength for toil to work. As far as they're concerned, he was a slave, and that was his destiny. Okay, so in terms of management, in terms of expenses, the planter would use the cheapest way, the cheapest means to get the maximum out of it. In other words, if he's going to invest X amount of money into buying land, installing equipment, processing sugar, exporting sugar, he's gonna look for a direct path to his objectives. And one of the ways they do that is by doing it scientifically. It's not left to haphazardness. It's not left to whims, whether you feel like coming on the air tonight or not. You have a method, you have a process, you have a plan. This is the plan, and you stick with the plan. Okay? You also stick with the process. For those of us who have studied West Indian history, you will see that on the plantations, there was a definite method in how they went about clearing the land, preparing the land, and harvesting the crop. Okay, I'll talk about that in a future podcast. But the holes for the cane had to be dug at a certain shape, to a certain depth, a certain distance from each other. The holes had to be filled in with cow down. So all plantations would have their cow pen where they would keep all their animals, their cows, horses, and so that would just manufacture dung, put down, and then the poor enslaved people would have to run back and forth with a basket of dung on their head. Baskets could weigh anything up to 80 pounds of wet dung, and that was just transported to the sugar fields and dumped into the holes for the planters. And the manure, as you know, cow manure is good fertilizer for agricultural products. So in order to get the maximum out of the cane, the cane curtains, they gave it the maximum amount of cow dung that they considered to be necessary. And that would have to be done every time, every year. It's planting season. This is the method. This is how you do it. And there's no deviating from that. The slaves, whether they were working on the fields or whether they were working as domestics, carrying load, cooking food, cleaning house, emptying out the pot sham, whatever their duties were, they had to do it to a specified methodology. And when we talk about the industrial era, the industrial age, the introduction of first the printing press that made it possible for books to be printed and to be shared and for knowledge to increase and to be spread around. Then you had the introduction of steam engines, the ability to cross the ocean, to use navigational aids, to use the sun, to use the stars. And as the industrial age increased, more wealth was being created from the plantations, and money went back to Scotland and Europe and London, parts of Ireland. And the money that they expected to make, they made it and they went back to their countries and developed their countries. And very little of the wealth was really left in the West Indies. Very little was invested in the West Indies. For instance, in Dominica, there's not many large um, planters' houses. The houses that you see that look above the average were those who were wealthy and they could afford to build a better house. But Dominica had very few resident wealthy planters who are living in the island. So they did not bother to build no lavish mansions like what you might find in Jamaica. Anyhow, so much for creating Emmanuel. So in creating this podcast, I'm attempting to create a manual to codify the way I go about preparing for podcasts, the checks I make. For instance, when I came on air, just at the moment when I wanted to come on live, my computer began to get it began to just seize up and buffering. I had to actually restart the computer in order for it to get as smooth as it is today. And I also closed a number of other applications which I'd have to do without and less fiddling around, which will go in my manual. It'll be instructing myself and whoever is in the hot seat. This is how we go about producing a show. Okay? And maybe not on this time, but I could play for you some of the one of the techniques I have devised. And let me just play it for you and I'll explain later. I am 6 inches away from the microphone, talking at moderate volume. I am 10 centimeters away from the microphone, talking at moderate volume. I am 6 inches from the microphone, talking at a whisper. I am 6 centimeters from the microphone, talking in a whisper. I am about 1 foot.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable.
So as I was saying, that was how should I put it? It's a procedure which I've codified in how to prepare myself for the show. Because I have not been doing podcasting or live streaming for a while now, your equipment tends to get dusty and crackly, and the processes, if they're not codified and you don't know how to go to check and double check before you go on the air, you might encounter a lot more problems than what I encountered earlier on this morning. So what you heard there was an experiment I did by with the equipment that I have. I wanted to find out the effectiveness, the maximum effectiveness of using the microphones that I have, and seeing how they performed close up or at least a foot away, talking at maximum volume or talking in a whisper like this. So it could work either way. I could perhaps raise my voice if I want to get a little more juice, a little more gain out of the system, or if I think I can talk in a soft manner and still get the same effect. It all depends because it's trial and error, but that is one of the tools I have developed. I've also created a number of jingles to go along with this podcast. I've still been hearing all night long. I've created jingle one, jingle two, and a number of other props that I can use as I go along, and that is to give the brand of the podcast. You know, if you're talking about this is the best podcast, then what makes it better than other podcasts that are available? You have to think about that. If you're a reggae musician, for instance, or you're an author, you're a writer, what it is about your work that'll make your work stand out from all the rest. Okay, it might be the content, it might be the kinds of themes you write about, the topics. Are people interested in those topics? Okay, and whether or not they are interested, are you interested in introducing topics to people? Are you interested in creating a following, or are you interested in looking for volunteers, persons who gravitate towards what you're doing and want to be part of it? And the only way you're going to get part of it is to be part to get in it. So then we also have practice broadcasts, and this is all on the pre-launch before tonight with my grand debut into broadcasting. I did a number of short practice sessions, again practicing with the mic, making sure I'm a few centimeters away from the mic. I'm not speaking too quick, I'm not speaking too loud, I'm not speaking too soft. And that you get better with practice. Like tonight is the first night, debut night. I intend to go for at least 3 hours. I intend to, when the results of the Calypso Monarch are announced, I want to be the first to announce it. As a broadcaster, as a journalist, it's part of our duty to disseminate information. And information must be timely, it must be accurate, it must be in the right place at the right time. Okay, now we're moving on to identify candidate topics. What do I mean by identify candidate topics? Candidate topics are a number of ideas that come from brainstorming sessions as to the kind of subjects you're going to be talking about, and the topics and the themes and the various ideas you have to input into the program. So I would have begun to create a list of topics, a list of devices and ideas that I can introduce into the program as the program goes along. So everything you see here on this page is as a result of the pre-launch preparations in the technology map of this podcast, because this podcast has the potential to become a successful revenue for me. A number of things have to come together naturally for it to be a successful, financially viable project. But for me, it is one of those projects that I feel that's very very useful for me because I can work from home. I can stay here and look after my wife, and I can be, I don't have to be running up, going to work every day, catching, driving down, or whatever it is, in an environment that might be hostile or might be not conducive to my personal growth. So this project, along with my television project and my publications and my other potential areas of growth, is looking up with this broadcast. For me, it is a way of exploring my inner self a lot deeper than what I've done previously. The next item on the pre-launch checklist is the inviting third-party collaboration. And I must say something about third-party collaboration. When you're embarking on a business, you you need to find the resources to get that business off the ground. A business needs premises. A business needs financial input to buy equipment, to have working capital, to buy assets if need be, and you have to get that money from somewhere. So the first port of call for any normal person in a normal situated family would be your family, okay? Or you may have worked for some time and been able to gather up some necessary monies that you can invest into your own business. And even so, you might still want the help of close family members. You might need the help of the bank. You might need the help of a partner. You might go into a partnership with someone to establish a business. And as you know, a partnership could be anything from two to any amount of partners and shareholders who also input money into a business. So you have to need to consider third party collaboration because, if you look at all the great digital companies that have come about, most of them started off with collaboration between friends, perhaps at the same university, or drawn together by the same love of whatever they're doing. Because no man can be successful on his own on many types of businesses unless you're like a one party, a one man show, you write your books. But even so, you cannot succeed on your own as a one man because you're going to need help to get your product to market. In my instance, with my publication, I've been using a website called Lulu for many years now. With Lulu, it gives you fantastic tools to create beautiful books. If you can provide the initial content, the writing, if you can provide that, Lulu has some nice tools. You can produce some nice hardcover books, color in black and white, in glossy pages. It's all good. But on your own, if you were to have to invest into printing press to print your own books, then you'll quickly find out that you cannot do or even finance working on your own, writing books and printing books and then distributing books. You know, so even if you're working from home as an author, and then but ultimately you're going to need an extended network of people. You're going to need third party collaboration, and that is why they advise you to get legal advice, which calls for a solicitor to help you to overlook your contracts, to make sure you're not being outsmarted in contracts. You might have somebody might decide to sue you for copyright infringement or something like that, you're going to need advice. So you cannot provide that advice on your own. You're going to need a third person who is specially trained, qualified in whatever fields. So you might have a lawyer, you might have a publicist, somebody or public relations publicist, somebody that goes out and tries to get markets for your name and to get you seen in television, get you on talk shows, get you in front of the cameras. Um, it's similar to when you're trying to get a publisher to get interest in your book. Most traditional publishers, although they might say we take submissions today, but in truth and in fact, they only listen to literary agents that introduce good books to them that has the potential to make profits for their shareholders in the organization. So the publishers are important for you as a person writing books at home. So you need to see what your networks are and try and develop them to the best of your ability. The next item on the pre-launch slide is to decide the frequency and duration of broadcasts. Okay, so again, when you're creating a product for the market, you have to really study the market and see whether or not there is a demand for your market. Podcasts is no different from selling mobile phones. The reason why the smartphone is being so addictive and so successful is because a lot of thought has been gone into producing slick designed handheld devices. And if you've been around, as I have, with the very early days of the smartphone, especially when it was Nokia and Motorola, who were the really pioneers of the smartphone before Samsung came along. The Nokia phones were the leading in the market of smartphone technology. And if you can remember the BlackBerry was also a product of Nokia. But with the advent of the smart screens, um, where you don't have buttons to press, you just press on the screen. There's a lot of technology that's gone into providing that kind of interface to use your phone. And as time went on, the market share of Samsung outgrew the market share that Nokia once dominated with their BlackBerry phones and their various Nokia phones. So now we have a system where you have the Samsung phones with their smooth face and able to press on the screen, and the screen is able to direct the circuits below the screen to do whatever we want to do. And it's all based around design, interactive design. People that have products are always looking at how to improve on their design. Does it meet customer expectation? Does it surpass customer expectation? You know, for instance, when apps were introduced, when apps will start to make their appearances, I remember people were just going crazy about apps on their phone. You know, you could get an app to measure something, get an app for teach something. There's an app for almost everything. App which to find a diner, to find a bed and breakfast, to book a train ticket, to book a plane ticket. It's almost universal what you can do on a smartphone these days. So we're on to the question of deciding the frequency and duration of the podcast. So with me, in my case, working from home, besides my other duties I have at home and the other hobbies and the other exploits I need to keep on top of, I had to decide how often do I want to produce this podcast. I also have to ask myself, how long do I want the podcast to be? And this is important because um, the frequency of the podcast will determine how often you go online or how often you prepare a recorded podcast for to be aired later, and the duration of of the podcast. How long will each podcast or broadcast last? I'll give you an example of why this matters. Over the course of this week, I was thinking about radio in the Caribbean and some of the highlights of radio in the Caribbean. And one of those highlights was the Radio Antilles station that was based in Montserrat, that provided a very, very good service for the Eastern Caribbean specifically. And you could also add to how far is your market in terms of podcasting or in terms of radio. All that will determine what kind of content you make available on your radio station. So the frequency and the duration, also your reach, all that will determine how often you decide to make this product available. Like if you go back to the mobile phone scenario, you'll see that almost every year the manufacturers are coming up with new editions, new designs. You know, as I learned in my studies at Open University, the storage space capacity is increasing every 6 months, because storage is vital for the internet to exist. It's also the battery in devices. The technology that goes into creating storage devices and energy devices is tremendous, because if you have too much of a heavy battery that discharges too quickly, then it's not conducive to walk around with a phone that only lasts for an hour or two. So the technology that goes into extending the battery life is constantly being reviewed. Also, the question of, is the phone breakable? Does it break easy when it drops? Does it screen crack easily when it falls? All of these things are looked into by the R&D departments of manufacturing concern. R&D here meaning research and development. If your business does not have a research and development department, where it's one person, where it's a team of persons looking at new research in your area and developing new products, improving your products, your product is likely to remain stagnant. Your product is likely, it may have its market, but it will remain stagnant in terms of its of the potential that it could have had if you had put in some more effort into research and development. To do that, it's a long story, but we'll talk about that in another podcast. But you have to look at the various components of your business and how you can strengthen it at every layer. Everybody must be working at their maximum capacity, at their maximum intelligence. From the person that has a duty to clean the office, get rid of the garbage, polish things. If that person does a sloppy job, then it affects the entire organization. It is the same thing with a manager. If you have a lazy manager that doesn't do any work, he just walks around and pokes fun, is not a good example. A manager must set example by producing work, because when you're in a management position, everyone under you is literally doing your work for you. You know, as a manager, this project is your project. You're the one to take the blame if things go wrong, and you're the one to take the praises if this goes right. So therefore, a person who's a manager needs to be pushing out the best example in both thoughts and in deed. So now in the pre-launch segment, we move to purchasing of new equipment if necessary. So like I said, if you have poor equipment to begin with, you have poor microphone, you don't have an audio interface, you don't have a steady cable network, or your internet is dodgy at best. These are things that will hold you back from doing podcasting. And the same goes to any business. If your raw material is poor, your processes are undocumented or not codified, nobody knows what it's supposed to be doing. There's no manual in the business. There's no overall in-house document. For instance, if you're a journalist at a newspaper and there's no guidance as to what is the house rules, when it comes to capitalization, when it comes to use of the apostrophe, when it comes to use of what type of print to use, what type of font to use, and you could break it down to almost any kind of business. You got to look at your processes and your methods, and you have to codify them into a written form. So somebody could come along who doesn't know much about the business, but after reading your book, your manual, he gets a better understanding of how we do things around here. So that is what the manual is all about. And I've touched already on seeking legal advice, so we'll just move along from this. But it's 5 minutes moving down after 2 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. 10 minutes, 5 minutes moving on after 10 in the Eastern Caribbean. I'd just like to say good evening to you if you're listening, if you're joining us. And if you're listening to this podcast in playback, feel free to leave a comment or leave a message in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any criticisms of what we have done for you tonight, I'd like to know about them, because like I said, third-party collaboration and third-party feedback is also essential in order for your business to grow. So, like I said, this live will be available on my Albert Williams reporting page as well as my personal pages, and I may also distribute it to other pages and to other platforms. So now we move to launch day. Decide on a launch day. For me, this is a tricky one, because initially I was thinking to myself that I would perhaps like to launch this on World Radio Day, February 13, 2024. That would have given me at least a year to put all this together and try to get some funding or get other people involved, see what kind of collaborations we could work up, speak to Dominicans, speak to other people, get their feedback, get their, over a year. But the harm of that is that over a year, a lot of things can go wrong. Okay, but as I do things, as if you know me in my creativeness throughout the last 40 years, look at my first product, my first article that got such a good reception from Mr. Van der Poel. Such a start, a center spread in the only newspaper in the island. You know, it was just one of those moments that's a personal achievement for me. And I followed that the year after with a poetry book. Again, personal achievement, 85, 95. So I'm not going to boast too much about my career. That's something you can read about in my Windrush story and my other books. I'll talk about that later on. But I decided that today or yesterday at midnight would be the perfect time to launch this podcast. And I thought, well, I know that the Calypso competition is being carried live. And a lot of persons will be tuned into that. But I just think to myself that tonight was a night to come up against the big beast of the carnival and launch my little podcast here so that when all the partying is done, my podcast will be here and you can come back and spend another 3 hours listening to what was done, what was said on this debut of the podcast. So I think the elements on this slide speak for itself. Invite followers to react, to comment, and to share. Promote the podcast on social media, and seek some sort of syndication. Again, syndication can only come about by collaboration and networking with other professionals in the industry. But before you can do that, you have to demonstrate that you have a product that they want to get involved with. So I'm hoping that after 3 hours, 3 hour programs instead of half an hour or 15 minutes, so we can relax into the program. I can remember when I was with the Dominica Writers Guild and we were planning, we were producing our literary program. Alvin Knight, who is a seasoned broadcaster, he was one of the first persons to work as an announcer on the Radio Dominica when Radio Dominica was established in 1971. He was one of the first announcers. And in 1994, he was still in broadcasting. He was working along with Dennis Joseph and Robert Govey in the establishment of Kyrie FM. And I remember when we suggested to Alvin that we could do our own program and we could build it up, he didn't hesitate. He gave me the hour, 2 hours every week, Tuesday and Thursday. And I remember him telling me once, I was doing my thing, talking on the mic, and I was kind of too much in a hurry, kind of following up word after word. And he told me, Albert, what happened? You don't like music, man? You don't like music? Let the music play, And that was an eye-opener for me because, like I said, and I'll talk about that too later on when I'm talking about more things, that the difference between live streaming and radio are like chalk and cheese. Radio comes from this tradition of you can't see who is speaking. You might be mystified by the voice, but you cannot see who he is. Now with live streaming, Now with live streaming, what is happening with live streaming is that as soon as the mind knows that it's on camera, your being changes, because you know you're being looked at. And the voice also changes. It's almost like when you're a singer and you know that there's a high note coming up, and you feel that the tension in your neck and in your chest because you know this high note is coming up, and you already begin to anticipate trying to reach that high note. It's similar when you're speaking in front of a camera. That's why it's rude to just flash a camera in somebody's face, because the person knows what the camera is going to do, and they may not even want to be on camera. But when you live streaming, you actually kind of doing television. Maybe not as well as a television studio. Vision, you're using vision, and it's teleporting your image to the listener, and you have this visual connection with your audience. Unless you're doing that perfectly well with the right lighting, the right format, I see people have 3 and 2 hours long program, strictly talking non-stop. Perhaps after a long time, a little advertisement or something, and more talking non-stop. This is not television. I mean, this is not journalism. This is just social media. Somebody is just, taking advantage of the ability to come on live and be seen. And, where radio is concerned, radio is a lot more about meeting established standards. There are standards in radio. When radio was newly, find its way in the world, that producers were afraid to. There was nothing like going on live to speak on live radio. You had to pre-record your programs. News bulletins would be pre-recorded. Even whole DJ shows, 2-3 hours. You can ask anybody that worked at DBS in the early days. I remember, people would record the entire program and just put it to play, and you just see them sitting down outside, or while the program is going on, and you think it's live, but it's not live. It's been pre-recorded. And there are benefits of pre-recording your radio or your television, because if it's live, there's always a potential for something to go wrong. Okay, like what happened to me just at the midnight hour when I promised to start the show. My equipment seized up, it began to buffer, nothing was clicking open. I had to restart my computer and allow myself to get access to the tools I need. So that's just a little bit about some of the driving thoughts of this project. And now we come to the penultimate video, the after show review. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights done after 2 in the morning, Sunday morning, and we're here with you, providing some company and some entertainment and spreading some knowledge. And we're just rounding up this slideshow on the podcast. And this slide here, slide 6, it says the after show review. So let's look what's the bullet points are. After show review, critic program. So what we're going to do after this show, I'm going to sit back and listen to it from the top and take a note of everything that happened, what worked well, what did not work so well, what were my was my mic volume okay at all times? Did it fever? Did it fade away somewhere? Was it rough? Was the music too loud? At what point? And you write that down into your book, into your project log to keep a handle on what the shape of the program, the quality of the program. You might say that is some sort of quality check mechanism, so that when you go to another program, you look out for those areas where you are weak, and you try and strengthen yourself in areas where you are strong, and you try to avoid certain pitfalls that led to that kind of you know deformity of your product. So you have to you must critique yourself. You have to be your own worst critic. You know, be hard on yourself to improve yourself. Also, as part of the after show review, you have invite feedback. So you might want to get professional feedback. For instance, I might decide to send a copy of this program to a professional or to an organization. Ask them, can you give me some feedback about this? What do you think about this and that and the other? Okay. And the after show review also suggests consult in-house planner and prepare for the next show. So, like I said earlier on, in the brainstorming, it's good to brainstorm ideas in order to find ideas. Um, in creating a manual, yes, identifying candidate topics. You can find a lot of topics from just brainstorming. When I did my diploma, journalism diploma, one of the books said that from one word you can get at least 100 ideas from just one word. You can get 100 article ideas, and you can multiply that. So there's really no shortage of things to talk about or to write about, because if you have that ability to see a story in something, in an event, or you see a podcast in an issue, or you know, anything at all, but you have to be able to see the story eye, the creative eye. You have to have that creativity working 24/7, always, even when you sleep in. I remember back in the days when Olin Bully was the chief cultural officer, we had a symposium, a copyright symposium, and he said that when he's working on the program, he will be thinking about the program all throughout the day. While he's driving in his car, while he's eating, drinking, his mind will be on the project. If it's a play he's working on, he's always reviewing how can it be better? Is this line good enough? Is this costume good enough? Whatever it is, you have to really live with this project idea, and that is what good management is all about. And good employees. If the manager is passionate about his workplace, some of that can rub off into the employees. Okay, so consult your in-house planner to know what's coming up, what you've decided, what and it's always flexible. The planner for the show or your schedule for the show, it's flexible. It's not something that you must have written in stone, but you have to have at least a working plan. So you can after the show, you critique the program, you take on board any feedback, you consult your in-house planner, and then you prepare for the next show. The next show is going to be a repeat of the one before, more or less. Again, if you're in the business of, to use a colonial analogy, if you're in the business of planting sugarcane, year in, year out, you repeat the process, getting better at it as you observe the best ways of doing things. I think I may have lost you. You may have lost me in my last few comments, but I was talking about the after show review, the critique in the program. You have to critique the program, see where you go wrong, what you've done wrong, what you could do better, leave out, what you could include, and you take on board the feedback from your listeners or your friends, your partners, co-workers, you know. And by that time, you'll be ready for the next program. So you decide what you're going to do in the next program. You start the process of planning the next program as soon as the one has finished, because that is when your ideas will be most warm. When you're in the heat of battle, that is when you see the way forward of how to defend yourself, how to move forward in that struggle. If you keep the program at least a couple hours or immediately after the program is a very good tool to your manual. Also, leave in your manual a space where you record some of the feedback. It might not be useful right away, it might be useful later on. So record some of the feedback into your manual, into your project log, and that's where you could have a ready source of ideas as you prepare for the next product or the next show. Well, I want to thank you for listening to me drone on about my brand new podcast, the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. And about now, I'm going to go over to DBS and see what's happening, what persons are saying about the contest, about the competition. In the meantime, enjoy some cool jazz music. And you're listening to the best podcast in town. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
It's 2:30 in the morning time. You're listening to the podcast. Well, what we're going to do whilst we're waiting for, once I go off and see what's happening with the DBS, Kyrie FM, MO News, if they have any updates on what's happening with the competition, I invite you to listen to Jump Like a Kangaroo, a video by Albert and Tempe from way back when, 2010. Enjoy.
Jump like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo. Limba, limba, oh, yeah, Dubai, Dubai, hey, oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Jump, jump, jump. Jump like a kangaroo, like a kangaroo. Jump like a kangaroo. Do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo. I met this lady from Australia. She come to England for the carnival. She heard a lot about West Indians. We love their festive traditions. And when the woman hear the steel band play, and see West Indians start to move and sway, then Lady could just not resist. She jumped right into the bacchanal. Hey, the woman jumped like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo. All day long, the woman jump like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo. Even through a double-decker bus. Hey! She said she really loves sound systems and the colors of the costumes then. She even singing the calypso with rhythm and with much gusto. And when the soccer rum get to her, she reach out and she grab her drink. She asked, are you from Jamaica or Dominica? Because I'm looking for a Rasta man. Hey, the woman jump like a kangaroo. She jump like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo. All day long, the woman jump like a kangaroo. She jump like a kangaroo, even jump into the river Thames. Hey, yeah. Now if you see a woman jumping like she's crazy, it's the lady from down under. Nothing like this in Australia, partying with wild abandon. It's the spirit of emancipation. Every race, creed and class in Notting Hill, London. It's the spirit of the Caribbean man, captivating the whole nation. See the woman jump like a kangaroo. She jump like a kangaroo. Jump like a kangaroo. All day long the woman jump like a kangaroo. She jump like a kangaroo. Even jump over London Eye. Hey, hey. Yes, she jump like a kangaroo. The woman jump like a kangaroo. She jump like a kangaroo, jumping like a West Indian. Hey. Like a kangaroo, jump like a kangaroo. Do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo. Jump, 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 jump. Do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo, do the kangaroo. Jump, 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 jump. Like a kangaroo, jump 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 like a kangaroo. Do the kangaroo, 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 do the kangaroo. Jump like a West Indian. Hey, people jump, hey, people jump. People jump. I want you to jump like a West Indian.
In town is
hey.
Here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable.
Jump.
Very large.
Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo.
Best DJ in town is here. He's
Jump like a
revolutionary.
kangaroo. Jump like a 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 kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. I want you to jump like a kangaroo. Jump like a kangaroo. Jump like a kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo.
Very large.
Do the kangaroo. Do the kangaroo. Jump.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary.
Jump. Jump.
Remarkable.
Jump. 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 We jumping. We jumping. We jumping. We jumping. We jumping like the West Indians. Hey. 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 Oh. Hey. 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 People jump. 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 Jump.
And very large and in charge. DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
All right, I'm back after a short break. It's 20 minutes moving up on 3 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. I just went to have a listen to what's happening at the forecourt, the Winter Park Sports Stadium forecourt, where the Calypso Monarch competition is being held. And I was listening to Cecil Joseph speaking with a colleague about the performance of Trilogy, and he was remarking that he used technology to introduce his act on stage and things like that, you know. Well, I think as we come to the close of this podcast, this debut podcast, it's 17 minutes moving up to 3 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. I will end the podcast at 3 a.m. But it's a good time to remind you of what we discussed on the podcast this morning. You're still listening to the first podcast. We started off this morning with a segment called The Changing of the Guard, in which we acknowledge the contributions of Mr. Desmond Martin, sportsman, sports administrator, sporting official, who passed away on the 12th of February. As we understand that funeral arrangements will be announced at a subsequent broadcast. And other highlights, we also touched on the recent Miss Dominica pageant and some thoughts on the Calypso monarchy, which is in progress. We touched somewhat on the recent heads of government meeting, regular meeting of CARICOM held in the Bahamas. And we touched on some activities and thoughts on World Radio Day. I said we're going to wind up the podcast at 3 o'clock. We came on air just after midnight, and we're going to do it again next week for you. Midnight Saturday. That's a date. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
Already 11 minutes, moving up on 3 o'clock in the morning time. Just to let you know that next week, Saturday midnight, we will be discussing aspects of our cultural heritage, particularly our cultural architecture. What are we doing about it? There's a lot of talk about some of our buildings going to ruin, some of our historical buildings going to ruin, some of them may be demolished, like the Jean Rees residence, which was a landmark for Dominica for many, many decades. But times must move on. And we're going to touch on that next week. We're also going to look at some of my Open University studies. I'll see what's going to be useful for listeners, people involved in technology who want to get into technology and business. So that's something you can look out for in next week's program. So I trust you enjoyed our offering this morning. I trust that you will join me again next Saturday, midnight, for another 3 hour podcast, the best podcast in town. My name is Albert Williams. On behalf of my wife Tempe, we'd like to wish you a very, very restful for the rest of the day, a very nice day. And we look forward to having your company again next Saturday, midnight. Make it a date. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large. The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.
And as I said, remember you can also write to me with your comments, your suggestions, your feedbacks, and let me know what you felt about the program. If you're listening to it on playback later on in the day, we'd love to hear from you. We were also happy that we could share some of our tracks with you, some of our original music. I dare say that I'll be busy producing some more sound effects and some more original music to play in the background. I think that's the way to go. Keep everything in-house. So I want to wish you a very, very good morning or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're listening to us from. Let us know. Drop it in the comments. Feel free to like my page, the Albert Williams Reporting page. Friend me on Facebook, and let's take it from there. It's a new year, new possibilities. There's so much to look forward to. There's so much going on. Let us just keep the faith, keep the good mental attitude, regardless. Remember, it is not people's opinion of you that matters. It is your own opinion. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of success for my fellow journalists and reporters and everybody interested in podcasting. So to take us off on the program this morning, I'm going to drop this for you. It's called Ethiopia Calling. It's in dub, but we'll hear more from Albert and Tempe in subsequent podcasts. The best podcast in town. Check it out. Dubwise. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday evening? Every Saturday evening from midnight. My name is Albert Williams. I'm inviting you to join me every midnight Saturday for another episode of the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town. We'll be discussing the highlights of the week and anything that has caught my attention and hopefully yours. We'll discuss it all night long from midnight every Saturday on the Albert Williams Reporting Podcast, the best podcast in town.
The best DJ in town is here. He's revolutionary. Remarkable. And very large and in charge. The best DJ in town is here.